Son! Son!
Okay, all right. I can hear it. Hello.
Robin, darling, it's your favorite agent calling. How are you?
Oh, hey, Chad. All's fine over here. What about you?
Oh, living the dream, Robs, living the dream. Tell me, is that rascal co-author of yours around? I got something I want to discuss with both of you.
Yeah, he's right here. Hang on. It's Chad. He wants to talk to both of us.
Put him on speaker.
Okay, Chad. You've got Benjamin and me.
Marvelous! How are my two favorite internationally best-selling authors today?
No complaints over here. What can we do for you?
Well, kids, I just got off the phone with your publisher. They are just clamoring to know when the audio for book 1 will be done. Any progress on that front?
Not quite.
We're still having a little bit of trouble deciding how we want it produced.
Guys, seriously.
Well, it's a big decision.
And one that you're lucky to be making in the first place. Look, if you can't decide how to move forward by the end of the day, I'm telling the publisher they can have the full control of the audio, okay?
No, not really.
Well, I'm not asking. Just figure it out and let me know what you decide ASAP.
Don't you just love our little chats with him?
He's a good agent.
He's a douche!
But, be that as it may, he's not wrong. By not putting the book out in audio, we're leaving money on the table.
We'll get around to it eventually.
But the longer we wait, the less people will care when it finally does come out. Besides, you heard Chad. He's giving us until the end of the day, or it's out of our hands.
Yeah, okay. So, it's back to the same old argument.
Guess so.
All right, make a case.
I think it's a no-brainer. Everyone does audiobooks. Don't you want our book to be more unique?
So you think the way to be unique is to do an audio drama? That's like the opposite of unique. People have been making audio dramas for billions of years. The medium predates audiobooks, for crying out loud.
So, there's a reason audio dramas have stood the test of time. They are exciting and immersive.
They're obnoxious and chaotic.
Not when they're done well.
People don't like a lot of sound effects in the stories they listen to. They just don't.
You were just plain wrong about that.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see about that.
Initiate keyboard typing.
What are you doing?
Oh, reviewing on our customer reviews.
Oh, come on. It's the internet. Look hard enough and you'll find people who will agree with anything.
I didn't have to look hard at all. You know, Soundbooth Theater.
No? What's that?
An audio production company. They do audiobooks and audio dramas. Check out some of these reviews on what is supposedly one of their most popular titles.
Great story and narration, overwhelming sound effects. Look, I know some folks enjoy the full audio experience or whatever, but I simply cannot stand these sound effects. They're distracting, annoying, and overwhelming. There are times when you can't actually hear the words over them. The story and narration remain top-notch, as always. I just really wish there was an option for no sound effects.
One lukewarm review doesn't prove anything.
Then have another.
Overkill on the Sound Theater. I love audiobooks, and having more than one voice actor is great. Heck, adding some sounds of door opening or footsteps is cool too. What I did not like was the random extra sounds for theatrical flair. The spooky or eerie background music was too much and took away from the story. I want to listen to a story, not a bunch of semi-random sounds overlapping with a voice.
They aren't all like that. Look at this one.
I love the ambient sound. Man, this series is great. I love it. But what I love the most is the quality of this audiobook. With the audio effects, I'm able to submerge so much better into the story. Huge success. Please do it again.
See? That's pretty favorable.
Hey, if one negative review didn't convince you, one positive review isn't going to convince me.
Okay, well, what about this one?
What an amazing production value. Great stories, stellar performance. The production value of this one is through the roof. New actors for new characters, sound effects, background music. The sound from the emotion in the voice acting to the music and sound effects, all of it was top notch. Cannot wait for the next book.
Oh yeah?
Well, what do you think about this one?
The jerks who punish my ear holes with this garbage should go kick rocks. This audiobook is great. If you're into literal torture, I would rather gouge my eardrums out with rusty forks and force feed them to my mother than listen to another segment of this overproduced trash. I'd give this abomination minus 1,000 stars if I could, but since I can't, 0 will have to do. Screw you, Soundbooth Theater!
Well, that ought to do it. Should we call Chad and let him know we've decided to do another?
Now, wait a second. What makes you
Sister, seriously, you're still arguing?
Look at this one.
No, you look at this one.
If you didn't have to buy music, just listen to these people. They suck. They're terrible. I'm hating them.
I love it so much. I can't believe that
Okay. Hello.
Robs, hi. Listen, sorry if I was harsh the last time we spoke. I know I get intense sometimes. It's just that I care about you guys so much.
Yeah. Okay, well, Chad, we've been hashing it out ever since you hung up on us, and we're no closer to a solution.
Yeah, boring Benjamin is unwilling to invest in art and still wants to do a basic old audiobook.
And Radical Robin wants to waste time and money producing some overwhelming audio drama that will drive anyone that listens to it crazy.
So we're at an impasse.
Wait, seriously, is that what's been holding you up? Guys, you own all the rights to the manuscript. Why don't you just do both?
No. Didn't do that.
Yeah. As long as we spell it out in both contracts, absolutely.
Well, should we just do that then?
Don't see why not.
All right, Chad, decision made. We would like to do an audiobook and an audio drama.
Oh, great. Do you want to use the same producer for both versions or go with 2 different producers?
Oh, no.
And see.
Thank you so much for the applause. Thank you for coming. We are Soundbooth Theater. My name is Jeff Hayes. I am the founding CEO and lead narrator of Soundbooth Theater. I'm also the narrator of Dungeon Crawler Carl and more than 200 audiobooks on Audible. Soundbooth Theater also has their own distribution platform now. We just launched a shiny new app that doesn't suck anymore on Halloween. So we'll keep on developing that for a while. Hopefully you guys will be noticing us as more major distributors soon.
My name is Emily Labus, and like the slide says, I am our Director of Marketing and Communications, but I'm also a writer. I'm definitely not as brave as you guys, though. Any books I've done have been ghostwritten for other people. My passion, and where you'll actually find my name on my work, is I write audio dramas, and we actually won an award for one that I wrote a few years ago, which was cool. Before working at Soundbooth, I ran marcoms for a big data consulting firm. Really fun, I know. And before that, I worked in book publicity for several years.
Hi, I'm Annie Ellicott. I am a narrator and composer for Soundbooth Theater. I have a theater background. I'm also a jazz singer and songwriter, and I, in recent years, have had the wondrous and surreal pleasure of being the tour singer for Jeff Goldblum and the Mildred Snitzer Orchestra.
And I'm Russ McGee, and I am a writer, director, producer, and I've been brought on to work with Soundbooth on a audio dramatization of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Also, I've worked in the past with Big Finish Productions out of the UK on their Doctor Who audio plays, and more recently, I actually had an audio nom with the Early Mile experiment that we did at WFIU, and so got quite a few awards under my belt.
You also have the most metal headshot out of all of them. It looks like a Trent Reznor pose or something. Well, we're here to talk to you about the difference between audiobooks and audio dramas. And for anyone who actually knows me and kind of has watched the trajectory of my career, you will see a spectrum. So first of all, audiobooks themselves, if we put it on the left side of the spectrum and we put audio dramas on the right side of the spectrum, audiobooks are categorized with 100% fidelity to manuscript, meaning we don't change anything. We just, here's the text, you read what's there. One narrator. So yes, the narrator has to take care of all the characters, no matter what species or gender. Sound editor and sound engineer only. So, like, bare bones. Now, I started off doing it all myself, but most people at least have a team of a proofer and a person doing the engineering, the mastering, making sure that it sounds nice. And then audiobooks usually don't have sound effects at all. But that is where the spectrum starts. So, the more curious and weird the producer of the audiobook is, the more you might want to venture in and start messing with things by adding maybe door openings, or what I used to do at the very beginning was I would compose music for the beginning and end of the audiobook. That was a lot of fun. I would like put a time limit on myself and do MIDI and try and capture the actual feel of the audiobook of the story. And then, as you keep going down that spectrum, you add more actors to fulfill more of the character voices that maybe the original narrator's not so great at. I think most people who are here have probably listened to at least one dual narration, where you're going to have a male audiobook narrator and a female narrator, and they're going to narrate basically the scenes that have majority female voices or from a female perspective. The way we do it, though, is now we actually say, okay, we're going to have a female narrator. She's not going to narrate. The male narrator is going to narrate, but she's going to come and do her voices for those particular characters, and it's going to be edited in instead of just trading chapters, or vice versa. If the female narrator is there and she wants the male voices to stand out and sound like males, then we'll edit that in. But then you have audio drama at the other end of the spectrum, meaning you're going to try and restructure the script itself. You're going to try and pull out some narration and actually illustrate what the writer intends for the scene to feel like with sound. So in some cases that will shorten the length of it. I think another term for it is abridged. And then we'll be dealing with a full cast. So that means 5, 6, 8, 21 people in the same audio drama. We have a director, a composer, a person in charge of saying, okay, what does this feel like? What kind of instruments do we want here? Do we need a choir here? We need more MIDI. And then sound effects like explosions, monster sounds, spaghetti. We use a lot of pasta. It's just intestines, don't worry. Yeah, that's basically it. We have, and as you might imagine, the budget goes up the further right on the spectrum you go. So that means if you as an author are going in, and I'm not sure how you go about doing an audio drama unless you come to us, but if you have to worry about budget, the more fancy you get, the riskier the audio is actually going to be for you as an investment.
Yeah, this is something that actually Jeff and I talked about, and that's the budgets can range from like around $8,000 for minimal cast up to like with the BBC for 45-minute audio play, they're around $27,000 US, and then Audible, you can be between 80 to 200,000 that you're working on as far as budget-wise.
And we're talking about Audible there. They have the money. They can get, what's his name? James McAvoy. right? They can get a bunch of Hollywood actors, so, you know, they can afford it. Have you guys listened to Sandman yet? Do it. Listen to it, it's amazing. So, yeah, audiobooks versus audio drama. We all know how to distribute audiobooks, I think, if we're all authors with some experience here. ACX, right, if you're doing it independently, or you just approach a publisher, or you get approached by a publisher if your ranking is good enough, right? So that is a bit of a no-brainer. With audio dramas, it's a bit trickier, and that's why we started our own platform. ACX takes 60%, as some of you may know. That's if you're publishing your audiobook independently, and you don't get to set the price. So that means that you're on the hook, and you're getting money, the same kind of money you would be getting for spending, you know, if you usually you're going to spend $3,500 to $5,000 on a professional narrator, and that's all you have to make up with your audiobook sales. Well, if you could get a bigger cut, or if you could change prices to make sure that people have to spend more than one credit to buy your whole audiobook, then you got to go with a different distributor than Audible, or else it's going to be much harder to actually make that money back. Russ, can you tell us a little bit more about other places that you can distribute audiobooks?
Well, I mean, there's...
audio dramas.
Big Finish Productions out of the UK, Audible we mentioned. Actually, I know that Tantor and several other places here, I'm sure you're familiar with, that do. And the big thing also to note is while audio dramas took a dip here stateside, that never was the case with UK or Germany. So there is a big market overseas that you can send your IP over there and still have it marketed.
Right. So I'm sure most of you are wondering, well, spend all that money for what? Well, it depends. Do you care about audio? Number one. Do you like listening to audio dramas? If not, I recommend giving it a shot. Or if you haven't tried it yet, I recommend giving it a shot. Close your eyes and enjoy the show, right? But it's not just that. There's also assets that come along with producing an audio drama. First of all, you all know that if you get a high-profile narrator on your audiobook, that's going to help sell copies. Well, also, if you have several high-profile narrators in your audio production, that's going to multiply the effect, right? That means, oh, well, maybe they're not a fan of me, but they're a fan of Annie, and they see Annie's in it. Okay, well, I might as well give it a shot, right? So you're multiplying the different angles that marketing can take there. Also, the things that are produced themselves will end up being assets to you, right? Like every important scene in your book, in your story, is going to be more fleshed out and something that you can use to entice people as a sample. Like, how much more exciting is it going to be to hear an action scene rather than just hearing a sample of the narration, where someone, like, really a retail sample on Audible is about the listener finding out, do I like this narrator? But if you put a sample of your actual audio drama in there with an exciting scene, then it's almost acting as a trailer, as something to draw people in. Other things, like the music that you have composed for your audio drama, that can be used in promotional material. You can make trailers out of that. You can take a lot of performances and kind of cut them together in the same way that a movie trailer would be. Whereas with an audiobook, not really, I mean, like, you can edit together some of the narration, but it's just going to sound like sentences that don't go together. It's not going to be particularly exciting. Unless you have a really dynamic narrator, there's a lot of crazy voices. But, so yeah, that's the long and short of this. I mean, audio drama is still on the rise right now. It's not moving as slowly, or it's not moving as fast as audiobooks going, you know, in popularity, but we're trying to change that. That's what we're here for. And it requires pioneers that, you know, not just like us, but authors like you who can engage with audio drama, appreciate it, and, you know, show it to your fans and say, hey, do you want this? You gotta take a chance if you want to try something fun and new.
theater of the mind. It's something that's been around for as long as we've been telling stories, really, if you think about it, because really we've been gathering around the campfire or what have you, and always telling stories to one another. And one of the earliest examples that we know historically that actually has worked as in audio drama is Lucius Seneca. He's a Roman playwright, and not Lucius Malfoy from Harry Potter. So Lucius Seneca is known for actually creating audio plays that were performed for sound versus actors doing stage plays. And this is all the way back in Rome, 4 BC, like 65, 80. So it's been around for a long time. But like what we now know as far as audio dramas today actually came more to the forefront in the 20th century. And the first instance that we really had that is from Clement Ader in 1881. He actually took a telephone system and had plays and operas that were performed in France that were then something that anybody could actually, up until 1932, listen to over the telephone. Then from there, in America, we had the very first audio, it wasn't even a play, it was a sketch that they did where it was called A Rural Line of Education. And what it was two farmers talking, and they had a telephone operator that kept interrupting. So that was the very first instance of actually having something come together that was dramatized. And then the very first commissioned play was the BBC in 1924. We had A Comedy of Danger. And then more into modern times, things that we think about today, and things that probably would be more relatable to you is like with Orson Welles, War of the Worlds. And I point that out because that is a dramatization, that is an adaptation like what we're talking about here. And the power of that was like he was able to take that and use like a different form as far as like taking it and making it feel like it was a documentary. So everybody bought into it and thought it was real and happening in the moment. So that's the power of adaptation. If you're willing to allow someone that safety to be creative, they can actually create another IP for you. And actually, H.G. Wells was still alive, and the two of them did meet at the time, and there's interviews that are recorded about that. But more modern, moving forward, because like I know a lot of people think audio drama is 40s, 50s. Things actually kept going in America, even though it's not as familiar. At NPR, there was a whole Star Wars adaptation that was done, and then more recently, in the 90s, Tales from the Crypt Keeper had his own audio drama series. So there have been things that have still been ongoing here in America, even though we don't normally think about that. We think more of that in the 40s, 50s, that's where it stopped.
Alright, so before I get into what is inarguably the least sexy part of this presentation, I think it's really important to note that this is not legal advice. I have not run this lab by our lawyer, and he would not love this. So, which is a really important reminder that, no two contracts are the same a lot of the time. So if you've already done an audiobook and you're wondering if you can do an audio drama, there are a few different things to look at. Obviously, you guys are all authors, so you already know about exclusive and not exclusive. So you can have, those similar deals that you have with distribution with producers. But even if you have a non-exclusive contract with a producer, it's really important to look at the specific terminology. And a lot of contracts will have a definition section. Read that very carefully. So like dramatization rights are different than audio rights, are different than audiobook rights. So you've always got to read the fine print, and again, when in doubt, ask a lawyer, because if there's any room for ambiguity, any room for interpretation, you're opening yourself up to a potential conflict. More fun, script writing. So Andy and I actually co-created the first Soundbooth Theater original audio drama, Space Things, and because of that, I got to kind of be the person who dictated how we format our scripts, which is great for me because I'm a huge control freak. So We use Courier 12, and as you can see from these samples, we like to start with line 1 at the top of the page rather than just doing the full scene. That way we can say, hey, go to line 7 on page 13, and it can be found easily. We also have a lot of space in there so our actors can take notes. Sound effects are underlined. You can't really tell on here that well, but any notes for the actors I put as parentheticals in all caps at the beginning. Now, I can, again, control freak, I can get a little bit generous with my sound cues and actor notes, and I'm really lucky to work with a team that appreciates that, but not everyone does. So it's important to know who you're working with on that front, and Russ is going to show you another cool format.
Yeah, I'm more familiar with working with the BBC script writing format, and then also moving over into Big Finish. We've actually done a little bit more than what the BBC has dictated. But what you'll see here is more similar to like what you would see with a screenplay. Instead of 12-point font, we have 13-point font, but we're still in Courier, so good family friends here. But some small differences that I did want to point out, and this is stuff that you would see more in a Big Finish script, is you'll note that on that slide there is a D in the definitions as far as abbreviations, and that D stands for distortion. So like if you have a robot or something like that where it's a character voice, having the D next to the character cue actually indicates that there's going to be some sort of effect applied that a sound designer would add. Similarly, also with wild tracks in the background, that's something that, again, you might see in film, but it's something we use in Big Finish and have carried over in what we're doing with Oz, where what it indicates is like you can hear that faint rumble in the next room of all the different people talking. That's that background. That's that walla. So we also need to make sure that, like, to make a scene sound realistic, like if they're in a cafe or something, we want to have like some actors do some background like that. Make sense?
One other thing I want to say about scripts is that a lot of what we do is we adapt novels into script form, and often we don't we want to get rid of some narration, but in our case, you know, it's a spectrum. It's like, okay, how much of it do we want to keep narration? A lot of the time I can say listen. Because then we don't have to do like too much of the character interaction and finding out other ways to do exposition. So again, there's a spectrum when it comes to budgeting with scripts.
Hello, voice acting. Okay, so character differentiation is a very important thing in audiobooks, of course. And even when we do books that are just one male and one female narrator, we really like to keep that multicast feel. That's important to us. Every voice has its own fingerprint. So something that I really like to employ is borrowing voices of people who I know, because I have like hundreds of hours of like recorded history of their voice in my head, so it's really easy to stay in that sort of fingerprint of that voice. Like I have this wonderful friend named Kate, and she's always talking real slow in this great sort of Oklahoma drawl, and she kind of gets this Cheshire grin when she starts talking about something a little devious, and she gets really excited. It's like she's got one of the most unique voices I've ever heard. So I like to do that. I like to borrow from folks. I don't think she knows that I do that, but she would be delighted. I know she would be delighted. Also, you know, training is important. We like continuous learning. We've taken group classes with acting coach extraordinaire Amy Walker. I take a weekly Meisner class because you know, Soundbooth Theater is all about. It's one of the central focuses is evolution. Organization! I put this in caps, so I just said it that way. I'm not scrolling Twitter. You gotta put a soundbite of every character's voice into a folder labeled that book. Because I'm working on a book right now for Bernadine. I'm at the Eternal Dominion. I'm at book 5 and I already have like 50 characters. Do I need to know something about time? Should I cut it off?
No, keep going.
Okay, keep going fast. Okay, collaborations. As the narrator of the book, it's my job to direct the other actors. So we have an initial phone call, we put notes in Teams, I put very specific character notes in Ableton, which is what we work in. Something that's really unique about Soundbooth Theater is that we're like a company of theater company, a troupe of theater people, brain cauldron. I don't know what I'm saying anymore except that we've known each other for years, and so when we work remotely, so I'll be having a conversation with myself because Jeff hasn't put his lines in yet. But I know him so well, we've done so many scenes together, that I have an intuition about how that scene should go.
I'm going to skip to Russ for directing because we're running out of time and he has more experience.
Okay, so one thing that I would say that I know Jeff and I talked about even before coming down is we both share the fact that we want to make sure that the actors are connected as far as the given circumstances, that they know the world of the script, so that they're all connected and all in the same place. Because you don't want anything like the Frank Miller film, The Spirit, for anybody that knows that film, where Samuel L. Jackson knew the world, but everybody else was off in their own little universe trying to act in that film, and it just did not work. So you want to work with the actors and make sure they know the who, what, when, where, and why of a script, so that when they're working, they're all on the same page together. For me, acting is reacting and to live and do truthfully through imaginary circumstances. Annie mentioned the Meisner method. I'm also a Meisner trained actor, and that's where that comes from. But I've also been working for several decades as a director at this point, and have worked with multiple actors as far as the different methods that are out there here in the U.S. And that's part of the why you see with objective, there's AKA intention and purpose, because the different acting methods have different names for the same ideas. And as a director, that's taken time to just translate and learn what the different things are so that I can actually talk to actors. But by doing that, we're able to create a safe environment where they can work together. And for me, I like to actually have it where they can all interact one-on-one and as an ensemble, because that's really important, where they can actually act between the lines. And that way I get a performance where if somebody's talking, somebody else might be just reacting in the moment. And see, I've got people nodding. But we need those audio cues in an audio drama so that you can actually hear it. And then in the stereo field, we'll pan the characters, and then they're always in the scene, and you know where they are as a listener. So those are some of the things that I use as a director, and just a cheat sheet of different things that I do use to try and help as I work with actors.
Right, so sound design. This is another aspect that's very important, is making sure that even if you like to play with sound and you want to create your scene, you want to make sure you're not trying to be too realistic. You want to try not to go overboard with your sound effects. There is such thing as aural space. You have your left ear and you have your right ear and you have everything else in between when it comes to what you're listening to. And often people fill up too much of that space. All we want is for the listener to get a sense of the scene, and there's plenty of white noise. I'm sure all of us here in Vegas right now are familiar with all the white noise that can disrupt our senses. And our brains have to work hard to filter that stuff out, and it can be distracting. So you can be taken out of the story by being overwhelmed by sound. So finding balance between that realism and getting across the feel of your environment is very important when it comes to sound design.
Yes, composing and producing music. Okay, so I really love working in a container for Space Buns. I got to write a song from the point of view of an old, jaded, 60-year-old saxophone player who lives in Jersey, and it Dirk's Claire de Lune. It's one of my favorite songs I've ever written, and I would have never written it without that container. I collaborate with Aaron, the lead composer, who I actually brought onto Soundbooth Theater. I've been working with him longer than I've even been working with Soundbooth Theater. And we have that same thing that you can't imitate, you have to take years to get it. It's like an organic collaborative process. And we're all musicians. Almost all of us are musicians. Jeff and I have collaborated extensively with songwriting and performing in Monster Hunt NYC. Yeah.
Justin composes for Archme Online. That's James Bogring's series.
Eventually, we're going to have a place where you can just go listen to all the music on Soundbooth Theater Direct.
Again, assets.
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously this is all very high level. We don't have a ton of time to get into this stuff. Russell and I actually teach a weekend-long workshop on marketing for audio drama, and so I can and have talked about this for 16 hours. That said, there's so many great panels and stuff here on marketing and advertising. I've been in Marcons for 10 years, and I still learn so much when we get here. But I did want to put this slide up. These are my two all-time favorite infographics. I'm obsessed with them. Feel free to take a picture. Because the thing to keep in mind with audio drama is when it comes to the promotion, you have all of the same tools that you have for a book or an audiobook. It's just about learning how to use those tools differently. So in particular, we're talking about marketing, PR, and advertising. I think a good way to think about it is marketing, you're crafting the message. PR, you're trying to get people to talk about the message through things like events, speaking like we're doing now, reviews, media interviews, things like that. And then advertising, you're paying to get the message out there. But the thing that I really want to sort of dive into as much as I can with like 40 seconds left here is the fact that you might be surprised to find that fans of your audiobook may not be fans of your audio drama. The reviews that you heard in the sketch we did at the beginning, all but one of them were actually real reviews that we have gotten on our productions, and I'll let you guys guess which one I wrote myself. But in the meantime, the beauty of audio drama, though, is that it can get your story in front of new people in ways that you might not have expected and reach an entirely new fan base. So, similarly to how you guys do with books and audiobooks, a lot of it is finding your niche, finding your genre, and the people who want to hear your story. But there are also fan groups and communities for audio drama fans. R-Audio Drama on Reddit is a great one. There are lots of Facebook groups too. And then, as Jeff was saying earlier, the audio drama itself is a great promotional tool. There are lots of ways you can use that, whether it's leveraging the cast or the director, or using bits and pieces for your other promotional materials. So yeah, there's really tons on this, but the big thing is to just find your audience and figure out what it is that they want.
Here's one way to look at it. How many of you guys get excited when you hear the Game of Thrones theme, right? Or any of your favorite TV shows. As soon as you hear that theme, you're like, oh, I want to watch, right? And I think that audio drama has that same potential if you have a good score, if you have something catchy, if you have something that really gets to the heart of the movie of what you've made. If you have good collaborators in that way, that marketing can be valuable.
Oh yeah, the work speaks for itself. It really.
And why audio dramas and what's the current state of things? Well, because of podcasts, there's a resurgence that's been happening. So there's a lot of interest that's actually been happening with audio plays again here stateside. And the thing to point out is that we talked about it a couple different times today, is you're actually creating a different IP for yourself. It's a different product that you can then put out there. And in some cases, that can actually create possibilities with television, et cetera, et cetera. And what I mean there is, like, if you look at Welcome to Night Vale, or Lock and Key, or also Sandman even, and that's the huge big one. But the point is that by having an audio drama, you're able to test the water and actually see what's going to work dramatically, which you may not be able to do budget effectively if you're just going in and trying to do something for a television show or movie right off. It's a way to test the waters. So this is another way to actually branch out as far as IP.
Yeah, and also, you know, it's not just testing it for yourself, but if you have a good audio drama and you really do want to get your IP into the movies, into TV shows, into other productions that are bigger and even higher profile, having a really good audio drama to show to people that you're pitching to is a great way to show proof of concept. So
Download the app.
please download the apps. And really come out with your mind hear exactly what audio drama is all about and what we have in store. And if you guys want to do questions? Do we have time for questions?
4
We
minutes.
have questions.
Do we have questions? There you go. Microphone.
If you don't mind.
Microphone. Yes, line up your microphone. Thanks, sir.
Hi, thanks. I was just wondering what a typical, maybe like a novel, 65,000 words or something like that. How long would a production take of something like that on the full cast?
65,000 word novel.
I guess you would be doing the adaptation or a break.
Yeah, so
that.
we would have to break it out and turn it into a script, right? But it depends on, you know, what we want to put into the budget, right? Let's say we want to do it for 20,000. Then we don't want to mess with it too much. We want to basically have some nice music to go with it, pick a few scenes that we really want to stand out, get maybe 5 or 6 people for the cast. And if that were the case, I think we'd get it done in 5 months. But, you know, I mean, even our particular audiobooks take a bit longer because we always do multicast because we're crazy like that. But, you know, it's definitely a longer wait than audiobooks.
And also from what we're going with odds, like it's right now we're looking at about roughly a year schedule, but that's like 20 actors that we're dealing with. And we're also, just to put it into size, because you said 60,000, Oz is around 35, and that's equaling about 4 hours of content.
I'm sure it's not a shock at a conference like this that most authors like a certain measure of control over their work. Do you collaborate with the authors on the script?
100%. Well, it's really dependent on your taste, right? Like, if I had my way, I would say, hey, author, why didn't you make it into a script? Because it's way less work for us, right? And then you give us the script, and then we'll like talk about, you know, problems here or there, negotiate a way to make sure that things work out right. But one thing about my company and about my production philosophy is I have always wanted to make sure that we are doing our best to make the vision of the author come out the way they want it to. So we work closely with them.
Yeah, and for reference, I mean, there have definitely been times with Space Funds where there's been a scene that like I had a very specific vision for it, and Jeff has like very generously let me sit in on the session with him, so I could kind of help explain to the actors what that vision was.
So, does anyone want to hear a little sample? Now, it's possible, like, they may kick us out, like, before it's finished, if, like, a new group comes in and they're like, we need to set up. But, if you want to hear what we can do, you guys can hang out for a second. Is that right?
Thank you.
All right, space for buns. Space for buns. I said space buns. Search now. Thank you.
This back end is very slow. I'm kidding. It's a wonderful website.
I am.
Oh, this is Dirk's Thunderballoon. This is the aforementioned song that I said I loved.
I think it's just the Wi-Fi is super
I don't
slow.
know about you guys, I've been having problems with the Wi-Fi.
That's why I was hoping to bring this up pretty soon.
Sorry, I was talking to myself.
Not a problem. Oh, sorry. I was like,
God? That's weird for that particular nickname.
Good. Besides, how long has it been since I last saw you?
I'm not sure.
It's been at least a couple of years, I bet. Way too long.
Well, I'll try not to let so much time pass next time.
You better not. Hey, does he know you're coming tonight?
Nope. It's a surprise.
Well, he's gonna love that. I'll let you go grab a seat. But don't sneak off without saying goodbye, alright?
I won't, I promise.
Yeah, right. Like you're so trustworthy and reliable. A giant disappointment is what you are.
What?
Have fun, kid. I'll see you in there a little later.
Okay. See ya. Wow, busy for a Sunday night. Dad must love this.
You're telling me. How many are you?
It's just me.
Alright, I got a stool over there in that banquette.
Works for me. Thanks.
I'll be over there to take your drink order in just a second.
I'm all set. Thank you.
We've got a 2-drink minimum.
I'm sorry, guys. We gotta go.
All right.
But,
Can I please just have a lunch?
Just go to SB Direct and listen to the episodes.
Yeah. Sorry about that. All right. Thank you. Yeah.
I want to sit at the front this time.